For the politics of this, let's turn to MSNBC political analyst Richard Wolff, also, of course, the author of Renegade, The Making of a President. Richard, good evening.
Good evening, Keith.
Story broke last night. If you look at the news today, basically it seems nobody is sweating what should at least look like a tough ethical and legal and national call. Is that a correct assessment?
Pretty much in the traditional media, I think that's right. Online, at least, we've seen some commentary from the right, broadly positive, maybe some criticism from libertarians. On the left, you know, those people who are quaintly concerned with this thing called the Constitution seem to be sweating it. But in the terms of the newspapers, it is perplexing. And, you know, I come back to hearing criticism from the Bush officials. It may be weird for them to hear me citing it on this show, but they would say, well, look, if it was warrantless wiretapping and that led to several pages of coverage day after day in the New York Times, how come this kind of thing doesn't get the same kind of coverage? There are two answers. One, maybe people thought that when Dennis Blair said something on Capitol Hill in January, that made it old news. But this is a much more specific report, and it's at least worthy of debate in the news pages.
Where does this rank on that scale of events when we talk about illegally detaining and torturing people as compared to simply announcing that we have the right, the president has the right, as was earlier stated, but now here's an exact case of it, an example, that the president has the right to have somebody shot out of this world? Well,
look, I think the administration, and they haven't made this argument explicitly, but they seem to have a carve-out for what goes on foreign territory. Now, that is not a legal argument. It may be a practical one. They may say this is broadly defined as the battlefield, and the president has these executive powers. But that's, frankly, an argument the Bush administration would make. It seems that the politics of this has moved to such a point that the administration has taken on a very aggressive, robust capture-kill, what you and I would call assassination program, without a whole lot of public debate. They are internally, inside the White House, very proud of this program, not just in the Arabian Peninsula, but also in Afghanistan and Pakistan. But again, this has happened without much debate.
A version for you of the question that I asked Jack Rice. Where are the safeguards about only opening Pandora's box under these specific circumstances? In other words, if you say, all right, we're going to let this one go because obviously we can assume all these other fatal words that have led us down the primrose path before, what keeps it to even these circumstances in the future?
We don't know what the procedures are. We don't know what the checks and balances are. And given the rules of war that the administration and the last administration claim for themselves, then may not need to be. The question is whether American citizens can claim something differently if they're on a foreign battlefield. But we don't know what the checks and balances may be, at least when it came to warrantless wiretapping. When candidate Obama shifted his positions, he said there needed to be some minimal oversight of the courts. As far as we can tell, there is no minimal oversight from anyone when it comes to this program.
Well, that's another point. The candidate said detaining U.S. citizens without due process was unconstitutional. The president says under these specific circumstances, or any circumstances, I guess his thought process of which is okay and which is not okay is irrelevant. He says under certain circumstances it's okay. Were there nuances to his opinion, or is this a change?
It's a change. It's a change, and I think he sees the weight, feels the weight of the national security concerns, the intelligence coming in. He trusts his national security officials, especially John Brennan, who is really leading this program inside the White House. But as a candidate, there were uncharacteristically no nuances there. It was just wrong, and he was speaking very much as someone who had taught constitutional law.
Is this a trade-off either politically or in any other capacity, any other way, to the decision on nukes and the going to the meeting with Medvedev tomorrow? Is there some sort of attempt to balance the soft image and the tough image?
You know, I don't think there's a trade-off with a nuclear program, concessions, advances there. In fact, the trade-offs are within those nuclear developments themselves. For instance, in cutting the number of nuclear missiles, there's actually significant investment in upgrading the nuclear stockpile. So the trade-offs are all inside the nuclear deal. I don't think it's one or the other.
Richard Wolff of MSNBC, author of Renegade, as always, great thanks.
Thank you, Keith.
Back here.